On a quiet, rainy evening, Liam, a young waiter at a small diner, is going about his usual routine, serving a handful of customers. Among them is a lonely woman who orders a simple meal, lost in her own thoughts. After finishing her meal, she quietly leaves. But before she goes, Liam, with a kind gesture, decides to pay her bill. As he clears the table, he notices something left behind, an envelope with a letter inside. The words written there will send Liam down a path to uncover secrets from his past he never expected. What does the letter reveal, and how is it tied to him? Welcome to Limelight Tales. What if a chance encounter with a stranger unravels a mystery that's been hidden for years? Stay with us to discover the truth Liam never expected. The rain poured relentlessly that evening, its steady rhythm tapping against the windows of the small diner where Liam worked as a waiter. Inside, the warm light and hum of conversation created a comforting haven from the cold, wet night. Liam moved between tables with practiced ease, balancing trays and refilling coffee cups while offering polite smiles to the few customers scattered around. At 27, Liam had spent the past 2 years working at the diner. It wasn't a job he had planned on, but it gave him a sense of stability while he tried to figure out his next steps. Though he kept a cheerful demeanor with customers, there was an undercurrent of restlessness in him, a feeling that something was missing. Adopted as a baby, Liam had grown up with loving parents who had done their best to provide him with a stable and happy childhood. They had been honest with him about his adoption, explaining that his biological parents had been unable to care for him, but they didn't know much beyond that. The only connection Liam had to his biological family was a small silver bracelet that had been with him when he was adopted. Plain and unmarked, the bracelet had become a silent companion, a tangible link to the past he knew so little about. Sometimes, when he was alone, Liam would take it out and wonder about the people who had left it with him. The sound of the diner's bell chiming pulled Liam from his thoughts. He looked up to see an elderly woman entering, shaking off the rain from her coat. Her movements were slow, deliberate, as though the weight of the world rested on her shoulders. She paused just inside the door, her eyes scanning the room, before she chose a table in the far corner by the window. Liam grabbed a menu and approached her with his usual friendly smile. "Good evening, ma'am. Can I get you something to drink?" She glanced up at him with tired eyes. "Just tea, please," she said softly. When he returned with the tea, she placed a modest order, a bowl of soup and a slice of bread. As she ate, Liam noticed her quiet demeanor. She didn't seem to pay attention to her surroundings or the rain streaking the window beside her. Instead, she stared out into the night, her expression distant and pensive. Liam had always been observant. His job required him to pick up on subtle cues, when a customer needed a refill, when they wanted to chat, or when they preferred to be left alone. But there was something about this woman that struck him as unusual. She seemed burdened by something unspoken, her movements slow and deliberate, as if weighed down by years of emotion. When she finished her meal, she called him over to ask for the check. Liam hesitated for a moment before responding. "It's on the house tonight," he said with a small smile. Her brows furrowed in surprise. "Why would you do that?" "Sometimes," Liam said with a shrug, "it's nice to do something kind." She studied him for a long moment, her expression softening. "Thank you," she said quietly, her voice trembling slightly. She placed a small tip on the table, gathered her belongings, and left without another word, disappearing into the rain-soaked night. As Liam cleared the table, he noticed an envelope tucked beneath the saucer. It was plain, unmarked, and neatly folded. Assuming she had left it as thank you note, he picked it up and opened it. Inside was a letter written in delicate, shaky handwriting. The words were deeply personal, filled with raw emotion and regret. As Liam read, his heart began to race. The letter spoke of choices made long ago, of a love that had never faded, and of an enduring hope for reconciliation. Liam's hands trembled as he read the final lines. The rain outside blurred the lights beyond the window, but inside, the world seemed to stand still. Who was this woman, and why had she left this letter behind? Liam stood frozen, the letter held tightly in his hand, his thoughts racing. The words on the paper felt almost too intimate, as if they were meant for someone else, someone he didn't know but felt inexplicably connected to. His breath quickened as he reread the lines. There were no clear names, no direct mention of a person, but the emotions in the letter were unmistakable: longing, regret, and a deep sense of loss. The last few lines of the letter caught his eye, sending a chill down his spine. I have always wondered if you are out there, and if you ever think of me. I can only hope you understand why I made the choices I did, and that one day you will find it in your heart to forgive me. I never stopped loving you. Liam's heart skipped a beat. He couldn't explain why, but the words felt too personal, too direct. Who was she writing to? Why had she left the letter behind? And most unsettling of all, why did he feel as though it was meant for him? His mind raced, but he forced himself to steady his thoughts. He had to find out more. The woman had left so suddenly, vanishing into the rain without another glance back. There was no way to reach her, no way to ask her what the letter meant. But the words had ignited something inside him, a flicker of hope, or perhaps a deep, buried curiosity he had never fully acknowledged. He couldn't just let it go. That night, after the last of the customers had left and the diner had emptied out, Liam sat down at one of the booths with the letter in front of him. He read through it again, slowly, trying to absorb every word. When he reached the end, he noticed something. There, hidden between the lines, was a small but significant detail, a reference to a place, a name that could have been overlooked by anyone not paying close attention. Liam's breath caught in his throat as he read it again. I hope you can understand why I couldn't keep the bracelet, but know that I never stopped thinking of you. Always. He knew immediately what it referred to. The bracelet. The one small object that had been with him from the time of his adoption. The bracelet that had once seemed so insignificant, now tied to these words, these emotions. Could it be? Could the woman in the letter be his birth mother? The thought was almost too overwhelming to process. He had never considered the possibility that she might be searching for him, that she might have left him the bracelet as a silent offering from the past. But now, as he sat in the quiet diner, the realization struck him with a force he wasn't prepared for. Liam spent the next few days consumed by thoughts of the letter. He tried to track down the woman, asking around town, checking local addresses, but there was nothing to go on. The diner staff didn't know her name, and the letter had no return address. It was as if she had disappeared, leaving only a trail of questions behind her. Finally, after days of uncertainty, he made a decision. He had to find her. There was a part of him, small but insistent, that needed to know the truth. Was this letter truly from his birth mother? Was she the person who had left him with that bracelet all those years ago? One afternoon, after a long shift at the diner, Liam drove to the small town where he had grown up. He had never visited the places tied to his early years, never felt the need. But now, with the letter burning in his hands, he knew he had to go back. As he arrived at the old neighborhood, the streets felt both familiar and foreign. He parked near a small church where his adoptive parents had once taken him. In the churchyard, he spotted an old woman walking slowly toward the gate. She moved with the same unsteady pace as the woman in the diner. His heart raced as he approached her cautiously, unsure of what to expect. She glanced up as he neared, her face weathered but gentle, her expression soft with recognition. "Excuse me," Liam called out, his voice tentative. "Are you looking for someone?" The woman stopped and turned toward him, her eyes scanning his face. Then, a flicker of recognition passed through her gaze. She stepped closer, her hands trembling slightly. "I don't know who you are," she said, her voice breaking slightly, "but I think you might be the one I've been waiting for." Liam's heart leapt in his chest as everything he had wondered about came crashing down in that moment. The woman from the diner, the letter, the bracelet, it was all leading to this one moment. He slowly reached into his pocket and pulled out the small silver bracelet. Her eyes widened, and for the first time in years, the woman's face softened with a tearful smile. "It's you," she whispered. "It really is you." And in that instant, Liam understood. The woman before him was not just a stranger. She was the missing piece of his story, the one person he had never known but had always, unknowingly, been connected to. Liam's breath caught as the woman before him gazed at the bracelet with wide, tear-filled eyes. The silver band, so small and unadorned, now seemed to carry a weight of years and memories too heavy for words. The woman reached out a trembling hand to touch it, her voice breaking as she spoke. I never thought I would see this again. You were just a baby when I had to let you go." Liam's heart raced, 1,000 questions flooding his mind, but his words faltered as he simply asked, "Why?" She wiped a tear from her cheek before sitting on a nearby bench, motioning for him to join her. "I wanted to keep you, I really did," she said softly, her voice heavy with emotion. "But life was not kind to me back then. I was young and alone. I couldn't provide for you in the way you deserved. I had no family, no support. I was struggling to survive myself. The decision tore me apart every single day. I didn't want to leave you, but I knew I couldn't give you the life you needed." Liam felt a lump form in his throat, the truth of her words hitting him like a wave. This woman, the one who had given him up, had done so out of love, not out of abandonment. She had let him go in the hope that he would have a better life, one filled with love and stability, things she couldn't give him. She continued, her voice trembling. "I had no idea who would adopt you, where you would end up, but I prayed every day that you would be safe and loved. That bracelet, I couldn't keep it, but I knew you would have it, and it would be the one thing that could connect us. If you ever wondered, it would be there. I wanted you to know that I never forgot about you." Liam was overwhelmed, his mind spinning. He had spent years wondering about the woman who had given him life, but he never imagined this truth, her sacrifice, her pain, her love. It was more than he could have ever understood before. "I'm so sorry," the woman whispered, her hands clasped tightly in her lap. "I wasn't strong enough to raise you. I only hoped, more than anything, that you would have a better life." Liam, feeling the depth of her regret, knelt before her, gently taking her hands into his. "I had a wonderful life," he said softly. "I've been so lucky. My parents loved me with all their hearts. And now, I understand why you made the choice you did. It wasn't just a choice. It was a sacrifice, a hope for my future. And for that, I will always be grateful." Tears welled in her eyes, and she nodded, her voice barely a whisper. "I couldn't give you a future, but I hoped you would have one full of everything I couldn't offer." Liam gently hugged her, his heart swelling with emotion. The weight of her decision, the pain of her love, and the years of wondering all fell away in that moment. There were no more questions, no more regrets, just the shared understanding of a bond that had never truly been broken. As they pulled away, she smiled through her tears. "I never imagined this day would come. I didn't know if you would ever find me, or if you would even want to." Liam smiled back, his voice thick with emotion. "I always wondered, and I always knew. A part of me knew I would find you." The two sat together in silence, the world outside seeming to pause for a moment as they shared a connection that had been lost for so long. Finally, Liam spoke again, his voice steady but filled with emotion. "I'm not angry. I'm not sad. I'm just grateful. Grateful that I found you, that I know the truth." She reached out to him once more, her eyes filled with love and relief. "And I'm so grateful that you turned out to be everything I had hoped for." In the days that followed, Liam stayed in touch with the woman, whose name was Evelyn, and they slowly built a relationship. Though their time apart had been long, they discovered a new connection, one based on understanding and shared history. And as they spoke more, Liam's feelings of loss were replaced with a sense of healing. Eventually, Liam invited Evelyn to meet his adoptive parents. When the day came, there were no awkwardness or tension, just a powerful sense of completion, of family, and of the strength of love, no matter the form it took. And in the quiet moments, when Liam would look at the bracelet resting on his wrist, he realized that the search for his past hadn't just led him to Evelyn. It had brought him closer to his true self. He had always been loved, always been cared for by so many people, and that, he understood now, was what truly mattered. Sometimes, the greatest acts of love are the hardest, and the choices we make out of care can lead to the most profound connections. Life is not always easy, and sometimes it demands difficult decisions, but love has a way of finding its way back. The people who love us, even from afar, leave imprints on our hearts that can never be erased. It's never too late to embrace the past and heal, because every step toward understanding brings us closer to the people we are meant to be. Thank you for being part of this journey. If you enjoyed the story, please subscribe and like to support the channel. Feel free to share it with a friend and leave a comment. We love hearing from you. Thanks again, and we look forward to bringing you more soon.